Hey everyone, welcome back to another hardware news recap for the week. And this one, we're doing a RIPLTT or RIP PCMR or RIP somebody, we're not sure who yet, for a folding at home points challenge because if nothing else, it's fun to chase points and do so in a bigger way than other people. So we'll be talking about that. We have updates on the specs for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. Some of that you already likely know, but we have a bit of additional information on it. The Intel and Micron partnership renewals in the news as well, and then a whole lot of news about human malware as it relates to computers. So NVIDIA's got some software licenses that have gone up for free for those researching the virus, Razer joining mask production, and folding at home surpassing 7 supercomputers combined in compute capabilities. If you're tired of that news, we have other stuff too, like Microsoft rolling out DirectX 12 Ultimate branding that we'll be detailing here, and then some other stuff that deserves discussion. Before that, this video is brought to you by us and our Patreon page. Aside from the GN store, one of the best ways to support our high expenditure on testing, quality, and equipment is to join our Patreon page. We've been posting weekly behind-the-scenes videos lately to update our backers on developments at GN. You can gain access to our Patreon Discord, videos featuring other team members, and Patrons Ask GN videos at patreon.com/gamersnexus. The funding has been going straight into maintaining our testing quality. Learn more at the link in the description below. The first news item is a bit of a downer, but relates to our other information that the research we collected on the ground in Taiwan. This one is the pandemic sending motherboard and GPU shipments towards record lows. As we approach the end of the first half of 2020, motherboard and GPU shipments are forecast to hit record lows amidst the current pandemic playing out across multiple countries. We just published our own content talking about this side of the industry, noting that MSI's Shenzhen-based factory alone would typically produce upwards of 2.6 million video cards and motherboards in 1 month, but that it had been shut down for an additional month following Lunar New Year. Gigabyte has also had reduced capacity, as we reported previously, with its Taiwan factory alone responsible for about 450,000 units per month, and that's its lower production capacity factory in Taiwan as opposed to its factory in China. And you can check our previous video for more on that. In addition to this coverage, DigiTimes has also cited its own sources close to motherboard makers, claiming that Intel, NVIDIA, and AMD are all expecting to fall short of predicted sales targets for the first half of the year. Additionally, the GPU and motherboard sales fell anywhere already between 30 and 50% on the year for last month and won't rebound, according to these sources for DigiTimes, until July at the earliest. As GN was on the ground in Taiwan recently, we also reported on how the current human malware situation has caused several manufacturers to have their staff work from home, functionally calling the industry in sick for the most part. So as the factory closings have been forced, manufacturing has been disrupted, and staff even in the offices have been affected. Things have slowed down, obviously, for the industry. The upside, we suppose, is that in China, a lot of the factories are now back up and running again, and they are approaching higher capacity, if not full capacity yet. So it'll be kind of a slow trickle, but then you're going to have a demand shortage in the US as well. And just regarding our previous video, too, of not recommending panic purchasing, pretty glad we made that because the economic hit so far has been gigantic. A lot of people are obviously have threatened positions at their jobs and service industries, things like that. So panic buying, a good thing to avoid right now. And honestly, although prices may in the very short term spike from people panicking and buying everything, much like they've been doing with toilet paper, although then you get dinged for price gouging as a retailer there. The lack of demand in the midterm might keep prices steady or bring them down, so we'll see. It's also going to play into things like the next GPU pricing from NVIDIA, which is around the corner, and the pricing for the next consoles, which is around the corner. So it's going to be an interesting year. We'll see what happens. Folding at home surpasses 7 supercomputers combined. So after Folding at Home worked with the PC Master Race subreddit and NVIDIA and others to promote its new COVID-19, still trying to avoid saying the word because there's a bit of demonetization, but it's not as demonetized. Anyway, I had to do a cut there because I accidentally said it. I said the C word, and it rhymes again with demonetized. So COVID, damn it. I did it twice in like 30 seconds. Human malware folding projects. That's what I was trying to say. The distributed computing network managed to pull together 470 petaflops of compute Folding at Home claims more combined computational power now than the Summit supercomputer, which for perspective is at 149 petaflops. We don't typically use this metric of flops, tera or otherwise, for a measure of power, but typically that's as it relates to consoles. We're going to talk about that later, where I'll dismiss the console maker claims and their teraflops of power, because it doesn't really mean anything when it relates to gaming. When you're talking about compute performance, it can be pretty helpful for establishing a baseline or at least a comparative value, but that's a different type of processing than when you're talking about gaming, where there's a whole lot of other stuff in the pipeline that's involved, as opposed to just crunching sets of data for whatever you might be researching. Anyway, more power here than the top seven supercomputers combined. I'm sure there's some nuance there, like localized clusters and access with the supercomputers and exclusivity, but it's still good, or at least interesting news. In a news episode from a week or two ago, we reported that one of the new supercomputers being constructed, which is called the Capitan, using pretty much all AMD hardware, will be dedicated towards things like nuclear research and military work, and existing supercomputers are already being diverted towards antiviral research, but not the kind that Intel needs right now. Next up, RIPLTT, PCMR, or really whoever makes sense. The group that we rip will largely be predicated on the amount of rippage that we can dish out. And we'll see, I guess. So we recently saw Linus getting involved in folding at home with 6 Titan Vs doing 15 to 16 million points per day. And we decided to turn on 2 of our Tesla V100 video cards and contribute about 7.6 million points per day from 2. So really looking forward to having a fun, lighthearted competition with some of the YouTubers who might be interested in it. Looks like Linus's team is getting involved, and maybe some of the others will too. It'll be a fun opportunity to revive the RIP series with a different spin. Rather than Time Spy, we'd be going for folding at home points per day. A couple of challenges here, though. We'll need enough work units to make it all happen, especially if we do a stream. It kind of suck if we're just sitting there like, okay, pouring more LN2, waiting for work units. But hopefully it'll work out well enough for an overclocking folding at home challenge. And then we'll hopefully help some of you get involved too if you want to participate from home while you're stuck there. We can give you some basics on overclocking. The biggest limitation right now has been availability of work units. GPUs seem to be more consistent in getting them, while our CPUs have been sitting around idle. We're hoping that we'll be able to get enough consistency to pull together streams, and we'll announce when those streams are on Twitter and on the YouTube community page once we figure it out. We can't beat Linus's all-time score because they've been doing this for so much longer than us, but we'll see if we can at least beat a points per day for a given 24-hour period for someone. Linus or PCMR, not sure who, or individual user as opposed to a team, but it'll be a lot of fun. One thing, we're not sure if our liquid nitrogen supplier is even working right now with all the businesses who are currently closed. We might not even be able to get LN2 supply. If that's true, I think I have maybe 5 liters left in the Doer. Otherwise, we'll do dry ice. Presumably, there's not been a run on dry ice. Not really. Maybe, I guess people have run out of toilet paper. That might be an alternative. Don't do that. But dry ice or chilled water would be an alternative, and that'd be fun too. All right, so that's something for you to look out for. We're not sure really how much it all actually helps. Folding at home has been cited in a number of research papers relating to medical research and medicines that have been produced, or at least have gone through studies. So in the very least, it's fun to chase points competitively, and I think we can all appreciate that. In the most, maybe it actually helps someone. If you want to join our team, you can open up Folding at Home, the executable, and click on, under Advanced Options, click on Configure, and then for Team, set the team ID to 234771. That's our team ID. My username on there is gn-steve, and like I said, our biggest limitation is getting work units. So, but they're trying to fix that. Next up, this past week, both Microsoft and Sony have trotted out mostly their full specifications for the upcoming consoles for the year. And as the case has been over the past several months, Microsoft was the first to reveal its Xbox Series X hardware. Sony has followed along, finally breaking its long-held silence regarding the hardware inside the PS5. As we've known for some time, both Sony and Microsoft have tapped AMD for semi-custom silicon powering both consoles. This has been known information for years now at this point. It wasn't really news. But the new stuff is how exactly that silicon's been tuned and what architectures it might be. We know that Microsoft's version is built on TSMC's enhanced N7 node, not N7 Plus, that's a different thing, not its EUV node. We presume this to be TSMC's N7P, or performance enhanced process based on DUV, and that offers either an increased performance boost at the same power or a lower power consumption at existing clock speeds. One of the biggest concerns, especially with the Xbox, has been power consumption. Both these devices have shown that they are built around theoretically being able to dissipate more heat. They're supposed to have more expensive cooling solutions than normally. And the developer version of the PS5, in the very least, not the later one, was built with that weird V-shape, but it was stackable. And the reason for that V-shape was so that all the venting in the middle wouldn't be obstructed by consoles above and below it if you have stacks of them for development. Anyway, side note there. At this point, we don't know exactly what process Sony's version is using, but it's safe to assume it's probably the same process. This is a massive leap from the previous AMD Jaguar cores that were found in the Xbox One X and the PS4 Pro, both on TSMC's 16 nanometer FF or FF Plus nodes, and on paper, both iterations are carved from AMD's Zen 2 silicon, the newest version of Zen as of now. With the primary differentiation between them being clocks and SMT, Microsoft has opted for a different deployment than Sony. Microsoft has chosen to offer its SoC with 8 physical cores and 16 threads, but with a very important caveat. Developers will have to choose between running 8 cores at 3.8 gigahertz without SMT, or running all cores and threads at a lower 3.6 gigahertz. Sony's implementation, meanwhile, will not use SMT, but will run with a variable frequency topping at 3.5 gigahertz. For the GPU portion, again, both are using AMD RDNA 2 GPUs. This is where things get a bit interesting. Microsoft technically has the wider GPU at 52 compute units, 52 CUs. You get 64 stream processors, as AMD calls them, per CU, so you can run the math on that. There's a frequency of 1825 megahertz for Microsoft's version of the GPU. Both Microsoft and Sony have been boasting about their floating point performance in teraflops or T-flops, but we disregard this metric as mostly useless, almost said useful, as mostly useless for actual gaming performance estimates, so we won't bother talking about it. Typically, as stated earlier in this video, there's a lot more that can be done with games specifically because there's so many suboptimal deployments for games to begin with that it's really kind of hard to just look at a number and go, oh yeah, that's going to run 60 FPS. You really need the actual testing, and it's very game specific. So we're not going to talk about the teraflop numbers because they don't really mean anything. So Sony, for its part, is offering 36 CUs at a much higher frequency of 2230 megahertz, but again, fewer CUs. Many reactions to Sony's GPU implementation have materialized as being underwhelming online, but it's worth considering that T-flops is a nebulous metric often spit out for marketing, and we need to see what else they do. Further, we don't know what else Sony might be doing under the hood and what distinctions might exist there, at least not now. Both consoles are moving to solid-state storage, as expected and reported on for some time now, and both consoles will offer expandable SSD solutions as well as external hard drive support. Sony and Microsoft will both be implementing PCIe Gen 4, albeit in different ways. Each console will also come equipped with 16 gigabytes of GDDR6. We know that Microsoft is using 14 gigabit per second G6 memory. Sony has not yet disclosed the speed of its G6 memory at the time of filming, at least not to our knowledge, but it's likely using the same. Microsoft has apportioned its GDDR6 a bit differently from Sony's. Microsoft is opting for 10 gigabytes at 560 gigabytes per second, a higher bandwidth, with the rest, the 6 gigabytes, at a lower 336 gigabytes per second. A quick note here on the storage too, the emphasis on storage this generation from both companies, partly they've been using it as marketing to say, look how fast you can boot and load games now, which to anyone in the PC space forever is kind of silly, obviously, but that's still an important thing. Partly also, though, this indicates something else that's important and likely everyone could have guessed, which is that both of these companies are preparing to slowly roll into even more digital download focus and cut out the middleman, which would be mostly GameStop. And given GameStop's recent actions, although they've now been changed, of trying to remain open as an essential business, for a while anyway, it looks like GameStop might not be able to afford any amount of closure. So we'll see if they stick around. But either way, both companies are preparing, as indicated by their increased emphasis on storage technology, to move mostly to digital downloads. For some countries with less developed internet, like a lot of America, as an example, that could be a problem. But for both consoles, there should still be physical storage options to install the games, at least for this generation. So both consoles are targeting 4K 60 FPS, and they are also promising frame rates higher than that in certain circumstances. For example, Microsoft claims that the Xbox Series X can run 120 FPS under certain conditions and up to 120 FPS / laughs in 2080 Ti. Ray-traced graphics and audio will make its way to both consoles. There's still plenty that we don't know about these, so we'll follow it closely. Both Sony and Microsoft have kept everything somewhat at a surface level for now. And for more details, Digital Foundry has some deep dives on both consoles that are worth checking out. Okay, next one. Intel and Micron renew their partnership. Some time ago, we reported on Intel and Micron dissolving their partnership regarding 3D XPoint technology and flash memory, with Intel selling its stake in the venture to Micron. As of now, it seems Intel and Micron have come to a new wafer supply agreement, or WSA. A Form 8K filing from Micron confirms this agreement. Details on the WSA are scarce, but suggest that Micron will be selling Intel 3D XPoint memory at prearranged prices. We do know that 3D XPoint is the base of Intel's more interesting Optane products that are aimed at the data center market. Micron, however, hasn't seemed overly interested in bringing any products to market other than the company's X100 SSD that uses the memory. Next one's on software licensing. That's exciting. NVIDIA, after encouraging users to dedicate power to folding at home for the earlier discussed stories, has now shifted its combination of marketing and actually support packaging towards genome sequencing software licensing. Parabricks is a GPU-accelerated genome sequencing solution that usually bears an expensive license. NVIDIA, given the current circumstances, has announced that it would offer a 90-day free license to researchers fighting human malware. Sorry. NVIDIA says that Parabricks is built on the Genome Analysis Toolkit and claims a 50x analysis speed via GPU acceleration. NVIDIA noted that it may extend the 90-day free period if the researchers require additional time for this specific research, and it has also made additional GPU acceleration tools available via GitHub for researchers. NVIDIA stated the following in its press release, quote, "Accelerating science has long been part of NVIDIA's core mission. The Parabricks team joined NVIDIA in December, providing the latest tool for that work. It can reduce the time for variant calling on a whole human genome from days to less than an hour on a single server. Given the unprecedented spread of the pandemic, getting results in hours versus days could have an extraordinary impact on understanding the virus's evolution and the development of vaccines." And that's from NVIDIA's official blog if you want to read more. And I guess I'll throw in a quick side note here, because I'm sure there's going to be questions. We did put CV, the full word, in the title of a previous video because I had gotten an email from our YouTube representative saying that they would not be demonetizing as heavily anymore for channels that are approved, and we're one of them. So we can kind of get away with saying it or putting it in titles, but the extent to which demonetization kicks in, we're not really sure about. It's a black box to us. So we just limit our exposure to phrases that may trigger it. That way we can reduce risk of demonetization. So we're kind of sticking with the phrasing. But seeing that box in the bottom under the video, you know what I'm talking about at this point, it takes away banner space, but it doesn't seem to completely demonetize the video. So we can kind of do it now, but only going to be when it's important. Anyway, I wanted to kind of clarify that. You'll still hear human malware from us. Razer also joining other tech companies, this time, or for this one anyway, in manufacturing N95 masks. Saw Elon Musk is doing some of that too. Amongst all the other related panic, one of the more hoarded items among the general public has been N95 masks. The shortages have been so severe that medical facilities haven't been able to get enough for medical staff who likely need it the most, and several of the tech companies in possession of manufacturing lines have reconfigured production to make masks, including Sharp, Foxconn, some of Elon Musk's companies, and now Razer, which announced via Twitter that it's currently converting some of its manufacturing lines to produce N95 masks to donate. We actually have a picture of what one of these masks look like. We'll put that on the screen. Now, presumably, Razer will face some competition from Corsair, whose mask will look more like this. Razer CEO posted the following quote, "All of us have a part to play and we should be doing whatever we can with the situation getting more serious. Please keep yourself and your family safe and let's support each other in these trying times. The team at Razer is stepping up to do what we can." The quote continues, "This emergency conversion of some of our lines and donation of masks is the first step of many that Razer will take. We are committed to contributing extra time, resources, effort, and talent towards the fight." We're guessing, if you're curious, that Razer's probably repurposing some of its lines that deal with cloth or textiles, which would likely be mousepad factories, but we're not exactly sure. Razer intends to donate up to 1 million masks around the world, with Singapore, where Razer's Southeast Asia headquarters is located, getting some of the initial shipments. Last up, to change the topic back away from the sadder stories, I guess, Microsoft rolling out DirectX 12 Ultimate branding. Microsoft has unveiled DirectX 12 Ultimate, the latest iteration of the DirectX graphics API. DX12 Ultimate seems to serve as more of a rebranding and is largely a continuation of DX12. More than anything, DX12 Ultimate will serve to unify feature sets and technologies across Windows and the upcoming Xbox Series X. According to Microsoft, under the new DX12 Ultimate brand, any GPU carrying DirectX 12 Ultimate compatibility, as well as the Xbox Series X, will support DirectX ray tracing, can't drop the X, that's a gamer thing, you need that, variable rate shading, mesh shaders, and sampler feedback. Any GPUs that cannot support these features will be identified as DirectX 12 GPUs rather than DirectX 12 Ultimate GPUs. These features aren't exactly new. NVIDIA supported many of them with Turing-based RTX cards. However, none of these features have become standard. This seems to be a play at moving the ball in that direction, with Microsoft also helping itself further unify the experiences across PC and Xbox hardware, trying to leverage one of its advantages where it has it, which is that it makes the OS for both. So this is something that's been working out for a while. Among the more specific features is DirectX ray tracing, or DXR 1.1, which is an incremental update over DXR 1.0 that's already out there. This adds a couple of notable improvements. First, DXR 1.1 will enable ray tracing work to be done on the GPU without needing access to the CPU before rendering. So that should actually be pretty notable. Additionally, DXR 1.1 will introduce inline ray tracing, which Microsoft frames as an alternative form of ray tracing for simpler scenarios. Microsoft has a deeper dive over in its developer blog, which we will link in our show notes, linked in the description below. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. As always, be sure to keep an eye out for any streams if we manage to get, well, we will. We'll do a stream. Just not sure if it's on to or not. Keep an eye out for that stuff. Also subscribe for more information. Go to store.gamersnexus.net or patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out directly. Especially Patreon. We are doing some more behind-the-scenes videos for Patreon backers only right now. And we'll see you all next time.